Welcome to Day of Discovery 2023. Can you believe it's 2023? Seems like we were just in person a few weeks ago, and yet here we are. So glad that you all are here watching this presentation. Today, I'm going to just speak to you for a little bit about one of the areas of frequencies that really is a cornerstone for me for what we do with our mobile scanner. And the subject of that is miasms. Now, why would miasms be so important? Well, some of you, this is just going to be review of information you already know. Some of you, it'll be a few new points. Others of you, it'll be brand new. Irregardless, miasms are a real cornerstone of what we're working with in our mobile scanner. And let's just go into some of the reasons why they're important to learn about, important to work with, and why they can really have a profound effect on the results that you see frequency-wise in the people that you're scanning and working with. So it was at the beginning when homeopathics were being formed that Hahnemann started to realize that when he worked with people and was gradually using like to get rid of like, that he started running into seeing that there were themes in the people that he worked on. And the more that he looked into it, the more that he investigated it, eventually he realized that there were common themes in all of these people. And we will go into what those common themes were. Now, for me, when I was little, it was in the 1960s, my mom used a thing called homeopathy for my brother's allergies. And all I remember is that all she would do was take these little pellets and put it under his tongue, and it worked every single time. At the same time, my mom was a little bit unusual from the other neighbor kids' moms because she would use vitamin C a lot. She would just do different herbal teas. She would just do all these weird things that none of my friends' moms did, but they always seemed to work. And so as I was growing up, I had this little adventure, if you want to call it, into the world of frequencies and energy that wasn't happening in my neighborhood with other kids. And I think that just kind of really stuck with me because later on I was just really interested in looking into different parts of energetic applications to see what else would work. So it kind of all started with my mom, and I'm really grateful to her for that. So why would miasms be so important? Well, what you have is you have some things in your scanner that could be considered, as you can see here, just small nails that end up in a tire. Just little nails, little bit of effort to work with it, to get it to move in the body, to get the frequencies to change, and to see the results from it. Miasms are a little bit different. Miasms fall into a category that a lot of other things in your scanner fall into. Some of the other counterparts of it are more like you see in this illustration, where it's like bigger railroad spikes, a lot bigger problem as far as a lot more energetic frequency influence on the body, something that can kind of lay low, if you want to call it, and kind of stay hidden in the background, and then come forward later on as you're working with somebody as being something that really has a big effect on the body energetically. And we have the privilege of being able to work with these different components with our mobile scanner. So what are those miasms that we're working with in our scanner? Well, if you look at the illustration here, you'll see that we have in our scanner psychosis, gonococcinum, leucinum, syphilis, syphilinum, basura, tuberculinum, and carcinosi. These are the four main ones that you're going to find in your mobile scanner, and they really can have a profound impact on the body. Now, what are you going to see in your scanner when it comes to these miasms? Well, you'll see on the next illustration that I have just taken some of the raw data that you would see in your mobile scanner. Now, as you look through, This would be coming through on after phase 2 on a report, more extensively phase 3 on a report. Look at the different areas here in the body that are coming up for these different miasms. You've got the liver coming up for the gonorrhea component. You've got the nerves of the lower body with tuberculinum. You've got the liver coming up with tuberculinum. You've got the heart. You've got the lungs. You've got the heart again, the lymphatics, the pancreas, the top cut of the heart, the mitochondria, which is every cell in the body except for the blood, and has a major impact on the ability for the body to have energy. And then you've got the brain, the muscles, even the large intestine. It goes on and on. As you're working with people, you're going to find that these different miasms have a lot of ability to affect the body. And so you're going to want to work with them as best you can with your mobile scanner. So let's dive a little bit more into the different components that make up these different miasms. You'll see in the next illustration that why the miasms can have such an impact. What Hahnemann found was that these different miasms actually would have an impact on the DNA of the person. It would be just an energetic impact on the DNA. So you can start to see where these could have a really big energetic, just an impact on the body. So the definition that you can see here that you want to think about as far as information-wise is that as we look at the following miasms and the genetic component, it shows that there's a predisposition that happens in the body. It's caused from diseases that have actually been experienced in the family line, often many generations ago. And it causes an inherited weakness, frequency-wise, in a lot of areas of the body. So what we want to look at now is what are those areas of the body? How do the miasms affect the body? And then what would we do with our scanner in order to work with them? So let's look at each miasm and just see how it could possibly affect somebody, and then what you will be able to understand by looking at each of these miasms and the effect that they can have is you can think back to just how big of a railroad spike these are. These are not small influencers in the body. These are actually can be very, very major components that affect the body a lot. So let's take a look at the first one. Now, the first one, here you can see a kind of a cartoon where you've got two lungs and they're trying to do some distance running, 10K, maybe a half marathon. And you can see that they're just kind of wearing out already, and kind of funny. The one on the one side says, well, how far have we gone? How, gives him a distance. And he goes, well, almost to the end of the driveway. So it really accentuates what the Psora tuberculinum miasm, what influence it can have on the body. It can show up as a lot of different lung issues. It can show up as asthma. It can show up as different allergies. It can be a tendency to pneumonia, bronchitis, croup, pleurisy, all kinds of different things that it could affect the body with. Recently, it has shown up a lot with people that are affected with COVID because of its really tight connection, with the frequencies that are in the lungs. It's kind of interesting too because Psora also has a major impact. If you think of the word Psora sorinum, sounds similar to psoriasis, and that's because somebody that has this inherited frequency weakness could also have it be where they're prone to having psoriasis or having eczema. So it's really interesting when it manifests in family lines, because a lot of times they won't remember that somebody in the family had tuberculosis, which is the disease that was in the background on the ancestor line that made it so that they have the weakness, so that it makes it that there's these energetic frequencies that are showing up in the family. And yet when they start to think about it, they can think about the fact that they have a brother that has asthma really bad, and then maybe their sister has allergies really bad, and then maybe they personally, when under stress, have patches of psoriasis and eczema show up. And then maybe another brother or sister just constantly had croup or some problem when they were little. Another one may be prone to having bronchitis or pneumonia, and they can start to see that when that ancestral person had that tuberculosis and that carried forward energetically to all the generations afterwards, that the tendency from that can show up in different family members in the same way, and yet it is still attributed to them all having that component that has come through in the family because of somebody having had the tuberculosis. So you can start to see where this could really show up a lot in your mobile scanner. It could show up under the lungs. Could show up under the skin. It can actually show up as other areas of the body because it can aggravate energetically inside, and just like it can appear on the outside as different skin breakouts and different problems, it can actually energetically aggravate the inside of the body as well. And then if it teams up with other miasms, you can even have the effects amplified. So this is one that can show up in a lot of different ways. One of the interesting things that I've noticed over the years is one frequency that is really common is tuberculinum bovinum. And the history of that is that there were a lot of dairy farmers in Europe, and a lot of times the tuberculosis ended up being on the teats of the cows that they were milking by hand. And then it would get into the milk and be on the farmer's hands, and inadvertently different people would get tuberculosis because of it having been something that they either consumed or he touched, they got exposed to, however the exposure was. But you actually will see a lot of, had a lot of people I've worked on with European descent that come up for tuberculinum bovinum. The interesting thing about that is that a lot of times they also have an inherited frequency sensitivity to milk, cheese, dairy products, those type of situations. So sometimes you can connect some dots and see that if they're coming up under their food sensitivity lists as having an issue with dairy, then you go down to the miasm section and you will see that they have tuberculinum bovinum that is associated with quite a few areas in the body as well. So it's just another interesting thing that you can look for in your scanner. And I have found it interesting too that a lot of times people that I work with will say, oh, you know what? I remember somebody saying that my great-grandfather had tuberculosis, or sometimes they actually have a memory of it being in past generations. Other times they don't, but it is still just coming down energetically, frequency-wise, through the family line. So that's the first one, tuberculinum. Let's take a look at a second one. And the second one is your syphilis lucinum. Now, this one is really important today because what we're seeing is a lot of stress. We're seeing a lot of anxiety. We're seeing a lot of people's living situations deteriorating and having it be where diets that weren't so good before are becoming even worse because of either, financial issues, a lot of things going on that way. And this is really important to note if they start coming up for the syphilis, syphilinum lucinum, because this has such a major impact from past generations on things like associated with it, like Alzheimer's, dementia, different seizures, bipolar situations. There can be MS, there can be tremors, there can be Parkinson's, there can be anything, nervous tics, things, anything that is neurologically destructive often can be traced back to that somewhere on the family line, 3, 4, 5 generations ago, you had somebody that was contracted and had syphilis, and then that was passed down through the generations as the babies were born to that family line, and then continuing on down to the present. There have been a lot of practitioners who have had good results with people that have had Alzheimer's, dementia, as far as just working with the syphilinum and getting it to where they can make some progress in those areas energetically. So here again, if this comes up, it's not diagnosing, just like the previous one that we did. We're not diagnosing that they have any kind of lung ailment or any kind of mental disability. What we're seeing is that in the family line, there is a tendency for them to be leaning towards that. And so when we see it in the scanner, we're able to use the different modalities of the scanner to kind of straighten them up from that particular thing that they have frequency-wise inherited. It's really important to let them know that just because these things show up energetically isn't dooming them to these are the things that they're going to get. It's something where they can energetically, using their scanner, improve the frequencies of their body. And if they see that these would be tendencies, then they can do the different things lifestyle change wise that would make it where they would be combining the energy of what is found in the scanner with the particles of support, like we've talked about so many times before, and just get it where the brain health and the nervous system health is improving, where once again, frequency-wise and energetically, they're straightening up from something that they just inherited, basically, when the sperm hit the egg. So you start to see where some of these could be very, very important in what we're seeing with people as far as health-wise goes. So let's look at another one. And the next one would be a miasm that's really, really important. It has so much to do with so many of the things that we're seeing today. The psychosis, gonococcinum. It's just a very, very important miasm because it can contribute to so many things in the body. It's from gonorrhea in the family line. Very important again to let somebody know this was in the past, that they're just inheriting the energetic frequency tendency towards the problems that could be caused by it. And if you look here at the illustration of some of the things that it can cause the word psychosis, by the way, make sure you tell them, hey, this is with an S, not a P. It comes from a Greek word meaning skin tags, like people get on their necks, or warts, because sometimes when people get a wart, it accelerates and they get a bunch of them. It comes from that Greek word. So it denotes a characteristic of the miasm, which is involved with things being sped up and aggravated. So if you look at some of the things that it can cause, skin tags, it can be a frequency that is present many, many years before any type of a cancer would manifest. It can aggravate the ampulla duct and the pancreas to where somebody can eventually have an issue with diabetes. It can have an effect where it can cause osteoporosis, osteopenia, from causing an imbalance in the parathyroid, where then there's a phosphorus calcium imbalance and you start having the bones become weaker. At the same time, the excess of calcium in the bloodstream can contribute to having plaquing of the arteries, kidney stones, cataracts, all kinds of different things that can be caused because of it. So ADD, ADHD is also energetically associated with psychosis. And so there's a lot of things that energetically, frequency-wise, are not being diagnostic as having those particular things, but recognizing that in family lines, you often can start to see, like they will say, oh yeah, I remember I had a grandma that was bent over with osteoporosis. And then, oh, I had an uncle that had this kind of cancer. And oh, I had an aunt that had some heart disease, a lot of plaquing of the arteries and, whatever. And then my brother has kidney stones and I'm starting to get a cataract. They start to see that there's a genetic tendency where another family that they know may show more of the tendencies like we talked about before from something like the syphilinum, where in their family it's the Alzheimer's, the dementia, the tremors, the Parkinson's, whatever. So you can start to see where things that down the line end up having it where they're actually diagnosed actually get carried in family lines, just plain frequency and energetically way, 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 way before they're actually diagnosed. So we have the privilege of being able to see these frequencies and help people with these frequencies and help them to get back into homeostasis, help them to make the lifestyle changes that they need to do in order to work with these miasms that we're seeing. There's one more that's more of a rare one that you don't see a lot, and that's the one, the carcinosi. And this is one that just lends itself more to some rare cancers that will show up in family lines. It's not present quite as much as the syphilinum or the psychosis, the other ones that we, or the tuberculosis one. But this still will show up in your scanner. So it is something that you just want to pay attention to. The frequency will come and go in the scanner. And a lot of times people will say, oh yeah, I had an ancestor, great grandma that had leukemia, or, some type of a rarer cancer that has just made that imprint on the family line. So you can start to see how important these miasms are. They can have a very big impact in the energetic field, the frequency field, on people's health. And you can see where if they started to interrelate and actually start working on a different area of the body, a few of them, if they've inherited more than one, then you can really have some frequency disruptions in the body that can eventually turn into something that is more serious down the line. So we want to just work with our scanners to be able to see these frequencies, see them come and go, but pay attention to when they come and go and what we can do to help people with these. We also want to make sure that we give them a clear understanding of the inherited aspect of this, and not that they currently have gonorrhea, syphilis, tuberculosis, or cancer. Once again, we're talking frequencies. We're not talking diagnostics. We never are. And so having them understanding the inherited aspect of it puts them at ease with what they're seeing in their reports, but also stresses on them the importance of what they need to do in order to manage these frequencies and get it to where they disappear off of their reports once they've made some of the changes that they need to make. So let's look back at the list that we saw at the beginning. And if you look at the list here, you will see just how much the body could be, how much it could be affected. So you have the liver with the gonorrhea, gonococcinum, the psychosis miasm, and it says high cause for 5 years or more. So here you could have in the liver something that is vibrating frequency-wise that could eventually have some of the things that we talked about under the psychosis description. Nerves of the lower body with tuberculosis, the liver vessels, once again. And see here you've got the liver with two things. And so now you see that the liver actually has two components from their ancestors that are coming up that makes it really important to start looking at these frequencies. You've got the heart in a few places on there. You've got the tuberculinum in the heart view, the anterior cut, another tuberculinum. And then when you go down again, you've got the heart with the psychosis gonorrhea miasm. So here again, you've got a double duty with the miasms, where one of them could be lending itself to a genetic history of heart disease, and then the other one could have it be where there's a tie-in between the heart and possibly the lungs, with a weakness as far as the tuberculosis. So you can start to look for clues in your mobile scanner. You've got the pancreas there with gonorrhea. That psychosis likes to aggravate things, speed things up. That's why it has the ability to lend itself in family lines to cancers. So if you have a pancreas that starts showing up all the time for psychosis or gonorrhea, then you want to take a close look at what they're doing with their diet, with their sugar. Are they showing up with hormone insulin issues frequency-wise? Because you don't want it to be that pancreas starts heading towards diabetes or possibly pancreatic cancer, which would be way down the line. Once again, we're not diagnosing that they have any kind of disease. Remember, the description of pathology is the study of causes and the effects of diseases. We're not worried about the disease part. We're worried about what are the causes, the frequencies of the causes, and how can we take the frequencies and combine them with the physical action in order to help them get homeostasis and improve in homeostasis to their frequencies and have better health. So here again, we have the muscles with one of the carcinosi. We've got the nerves of the brain with syphilis. That would be an important one. Nerves of the brain, syphilis. Think long-term, Alzheimer's, dementia, nervous tics, seizures, MS, all those types of things. We want to improve their brain health in order to not have those frequencies ever manifest into something physical. And then you've got the large intestine as well. So you can start really learning a lot about their body and what it's doing frequency-wise when you understand the inherited components of these miasms. So let's talk about our ability to be proactive. Here you have a list. So always start with your inner voice. It is a well-known fact. Lauren has talked about this repeatedly. Everything starts with emotion. So when you start seeing these miasms associated with parts of the body, always look back to see where those parts of the body have something to do with emotion. Start there. Then go to your comprehensive and vitals with those body parts and see what comes up in the databases that could also contribute to those type of things. With the tuberculinum, with the psora, it could be that there's mold, that there's fungus, involvement with the lungs. Start looking for clues in different areas that show why these things are happening. Your body systems will always give you suggestions on what to do with these different areas as far as lifestyle changes. And then supplementation, think of the things that Solex has given you for brain health, omegas, for the second brain health, the association of the gut with the brain, with your prime, with your ability to use your dots. You have so many tools on hand that you can use in order to start to move the frequencies of the areas being affected by those miasms. You have your homeopathics, the whole list of homeopathics, and then right in your homeoenergetics, you have psychosis, you have serenum, you have carcinosi, you have all the tuberculinum, you have all of those miasms in your homeoenergetics. And the advantage of that, if you go, you can use that in phase 3, after phase 3, where the brain will pick out the exact frequencies needed. And they also have built into them the frequencies to push the spleen, the liver, everything in the body, the lymphatics, to actually move the toxins as they start to detox frequency-wise. And then that can be backed up by the physical components that support the liver and the kidneys and the lymphatics, as well. So you have all of these things. And then you also are able to look at all the lifestyle changes that are suggested. The lifestyle changes that are suggested throughout your mobile scanner are going to be invaluable to get them to drink more water, to eat better, to do the thing, to take the supplementation that's needed to support when you're working with these miasms and trying to get those frequencies to go back into homeostasis. So I hope that this has helped with some understanding of the miasms, the benefit of what you've got in your scanner, how you can use it, what you can do with it, and also really coming to an understanding of just how important those miasms are. Remember, they're not just a nail, they're like a railroad spike. They actually can be a cornerstone of a person's health and what they have had come forward from ancestors. And a lot of times it can be one of the top causes underneath frequency wise that you can work with to just help them straighten up and move in the right direction with everything else that you're doing. So I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. Glad that you're here at Day of Discovery. Look forward to seeing you later in the year in person, and just hope that you've enjoyed this discussion on one of the cornerstones and important parts of your scanner, and that's miasms.